Hello, hello. It's so wonderful to see all of you. We can still say Happy New Year because we haven't seen you, and this is our first virtual event of the year. My name is Hamza, and I'm with the Small Giants community, and I have a couple of colleagues as well, Annie and Bridget, who are also up at the top. And we are so excited to see you. We see so many wonderful friends joining us back and also some new names. If you haven't put in the chat yet, we'd love to hear where you're coming to us from. If this is your first time to a Small Giant virtual event, we are very casual, we're conversational, and this is going to be very interactive. So we would love to see you if you're able to share your beautiful faces on camera, but that's okay if you can't. And we would also love to hear from you throughout this conversation. So if you have questions, as you hear from our panelists, you could insert those in the chat. You can also raise your hand. There's a feature in reactions where you can raise your hand and we can call on you. So we'd love to hear from a few people as well. There'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions during this conversation and also towards the end. And then with that, I would love to introduce our wonderful panelists. First, we have Heidi Baumgart, and she is the COO of Skidmore Studio. She is also in our Leadership Academy in this year's class, and she's been on a panel in the summit before and also has contributed to many of our wonderful content pieces, and we're so excited to have Heidi with us. We also have Lisa Whalen. She is the VP of People and Culture at Deli Star. Lisa has also taught in our Leadership Academy in the past and was also part of the panel with Heidi, and hence they became very good friends as a result of the Small Giant Summit. So we are super excited to have them as part of today's panel. I'm first going to start off by talking with both of them, and they're going to talk a little bit about their backgrounds and also share the tools and resources. And then we will go to the questions that you all have submitted as part of the registration. We had plenty that came through that we'll tackle. And then, of course, we'll tackle many more throughout this conversation. So with that, Heidi, I'd love to start off with you. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Heidi Baumgart. I am COO at Skidmore Studio, and today is my 6-month work anniversary with Skidmore, which is very fun. And I lead people ops and business ops predominantly at Skidmore, which is a brand and marketing studio for CPG, food and fun brands and their growth. And I am just so blessed that I kind of career job crafted this role after knowing Drew Patrick, our owner, for 5 years, because I met him in the lunch line at the Small Giants Summit, the first lunch at the first summit I went to in 2018. So like Hamza mentioned, I've been part of Small Giants for 5 years now. I've been to 4 of the 4 summits that have happened, and excited to be in Leadership Academy, and so excited to be a part of one of these webinars because I've found so much value. So hopefully we can give back today. So a little bit about me. Do you want me to go to my tool or?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, great. So one of my favorite tools that I started using at a previous role is something I call user manuals. I heard about it listening to Adam Grant, if anybody knows Adam Grant, talk on Dax Shepard's podcast, which is a unique pairing. But when I heard the concept, I looked up what Adam had to say about it, and I looked up what the news in the world had to say about it. And I found a bunch of articles and a bunch of great frameworks around the concept. And essentially a user manual is writing literally an instruction manual about how to work with you. So, you know, if you think about the first thing that has come to mind in groups that I've facilitated doing this framework is like thinking about like the IKEA with the Allen wrench model. But there's lots of different ways to do it. So it's definitely more instructional or tips and tricks, that kind of style, more than say a resume or a social media profile. It definitely isn't like, oh, my favorite movie is this or whatever. And those are all important, fun things to share with colleagues or groups that you're in. But user manual should be thought of as, like I said, instruction manual. And so there's some general questions that I suggest that you ask whatever group that you're facilitating a user manual experience with. So the way that I've done it in the past is invite everybody to see all these links that I'd read in general about user manuals, to see the kinds of things they could answer in their user manual, and then do the homework, build their user manual, and then come together as a group in which I facilitated a conversation and a share where everybody actually shared their user manual. Those groups have been different sizes or different kinds of folks depending on the situation. So here at Skidmore Studio, right now we're between 12, 13 people. So it made sense for us to do user manual company-wide. We just did it at one of our quarterly all hands meetings. And so all of us did it all at once. In other situations, I've done it with just the department I led. So the department I led at a former employer, there were 70 people on the team. That was kind of a nice size. I've also facilitated the conversation amongst just leaders of a group or the leaders within a department. One time I did all of the different leadership roles within an operations department. And that one, I have to say, a great anecdote of that one was there were 5 people who sat on this operations leadership department, and 3 of them had worked at a previous company together, and they'd worked at this company together, and they'd worked together in different ways, shapes, or forms for years. And the biggest aha learning I had ever seen in a user manual facilitated conversation was in this group with people who had worked together for, again, like years and years. So it definitely can help people just find new connections, find empathy, or find some shortcuts. I know that when I've seen even current bosses user manuals, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what really motivates that person. That's what really drives them. And that's why they, position whatever they're saying in that way. So it's really helped build empathy and understanding. For me, when people see my user manual, they know that if I'm looking a little glossy-eyed, they probably need to pass me some protein, or that I just need a break. There's just certain things that we know about ourselves. I will say that the other fun anecdote about writing your own user manual, even if you don't anticipate using it in a group or sharing it, if you write your own user manual, every person I know who's done this said, like I knew a lot about myself, but this really made me go through a sort of audit about who I am and what I'm doing and why I do it that way. And so it's definitely, self-learning as well. So I'm going to share my screen because I think it's helpful to see some of the questions related to a user manual. So this is just a general Word doc I've built, and I know that the team will share this with you after the fact. But it's a basic framework. Here's how you can think about writing your user manual. I would not suggest prescribing any format. So give people the questions and let people design it however they want. So what's their style? How is it best to approach me? How is it best to communicate? Or PMOC, as some people like to use, what you value, what you don't tolerate, how you make decisions. Decision making is a huge one. What you just don't have patience for, how to help me. That's always a great one. What people misunderstand always adds a lot of fodder. And then I've seen all kinds of different ones all kinds of different bonus material from folks. The traditional business ones being Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, DISC assessments, Enneagram, all those things. And some of those tools are paid. Some of them are free online. If you already have those things that you're using in your company, great. If you don't want to pay for them, no problem. There's usually some sort of kind of basic free version. I will say that the younger millennial and Gen Z generation, we've had some wonderful conversations about astrology and about Enneagram more recently. And one of my favorite ones is preferred method of appreciation. So if you haven't heard that concept, maybe you've heard of the 5 love languages. Some of the same writers wrote a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation, which is similar to love languages, but at work. And we all know how we may like to be talk to, but do we also know how we like to be appreciated, how we like to receive support or gratitude recognition? And so that can bring a lot of great learning. So that's the basic framework. And again, the way I've done this is I've shared this document. I invited everybody to do the homework and come together at a set time and place or set, virtual space. It definitely doesn't have to be in person, and have someone lead a conversation, facilitate the conversation. Maybe they're one of the people who did the user manual, or maybe they aren't. You would know your team, and I'm happy to give suggestions on that. But I facilitated the conversation with people who I didn't work with, and it works very well just to keep the conversation moving. And I ask questions like, share your document, read it to us, or share on the screen, or print out copies, depending on what style meeting it is. And I've found that about 10 minutes per person of sharing is an appropriate amount of time. Some people think that they'll just be 3 minutes, and they're always 10 or 12. So if you can plan that amount of time, and then I spend a minute or two getting a reaction from everybody. This is the facilitation of the conversation. And I'm asking people, so what did you know? Where were you nodding your head? And I love to ask people, where were you surprised? Or how will you change how you work with this person? And those conversations help build some light bulbs, both, again, in that situation where I was working with colleagues who had worked together for years. They were like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Or there was just some basic things like, oh, when Sally wears her headphones and is doing this, that is my signal. Don't bother her at that time if you don't have to. Just these little basic things that have built so much empathy. One other thought I just recently had, I had someone on my team who here at Skidmore who just recently left, and I followed up with her and I said, hey, how's the new job going? Like, what's going on? And her main comment was, it's going fine, but I wish they had user manuals here. So I sent her this document so that maybe she could share it, because she was already missing not having the access with people and not being able to pull them up. So that's kind of a part 2 of, after people build user manuals, maybe you've had that meeting and facilitated the conversations, then make sure that you get those copies, those PDFs or whatever they are, put them on wherever your shared drive is, if you have an internet or a cloud, or you email them to everybody, wherever it makes sense for you and your group, organization, or company to save them all in one place. Put them somewhere, and then that way people can reference them. For Skidmore, because like I said, we did it the whole company. Of course, we've had new people come on. So the way we've been able to keep it moving, even with new folks, is as part of onboarding, I automatically send everybody the user manual and say, hey, we would love for you to create your next user manual by such and such time. And once you're done with your user manual, then we will give you access to the rest of the companies. I don't let people have access right away, because I don't want them to see other people's versions or styles or how they built it, because I find that could make them build it in such a way, or answer questions in such a way that weren't authentic enough for them. And it's kind of a fun reward after you do your user manual, then you get to read everybody else's. Skidmore gets together quarterly, so we've just made it part of our general process that every quarter, whomever was new, as part of the introductions and getting to know them, they will present their user manuals. We just did this last week, and it was super fun to have like bonus user manuals after having done a bigger group. And one of our new people who just started today, I've been onboarding all morning, she was already digging into her user manual. So it's a great rolling program, whether you're virtual, you're in person, hybrid, whatever it is, it's a great rolling program. And then just to give you a sense of what these can look like, if people ask you, there's some people who will panic and worry about framework and format, and like, what are you expecting? And all of that kind of thing. I've definitely got those questions, and I've worked with a lot of marketing and designer people who have quite the great skills, but they don't have to be overly designed. So like I said, I've seen all kinds of different formats. I've seen people go on Canva and use resume templates. I've seen them actually use their resume and like take stuff off and add things in because they were comfortable with that format. I've seen people actually make it look like an IKEA manual because they were really handy like that. One of my colleagues is really into the aviation airplane cards that go in the back of the seats. And so he designed his like that, and it was just so him, and it like gave a glimpse into a hobby or a passion of his. I've seen PowerPoint presentations and those Prezi presentations that like pop open and close and open. Because I work for Brand Studio, I saw someone use a brand standards guide to make it their own brand standards guide. I've seen mood boards with captions. That was a really unique way that someone has put it together. And I'm a former marketer people person who loves to storytell. So my brain works in Instagram story panels. That's my media of choice. So a link that's on the document, again, I can either drop in the chat or I'm sure the team will share. If you go on my Instagram, you can click through and here's how I built mine. I show purpose and vision and mission and my core values, and I answer all the questions, but here is mine, and hopefully that helps or doesn't hinder you. So that's the user manual experience. Like I said, it's built a lot of empathy, it's built a lot of learning, and it's also built a lot of like self-understanding in the situations that I've seen it.
Super. Thank you, Heidi. So wonderful. And as Heidi mentioned, we are going to share the templates with you afterwards. And if you have any questions or more questions for Heidi, drop them in the chat. One did come in from Ruth Ann, and is it recommended to use this with family members or life partners? Have you done that before?
I have not, and now I want to. So, I mean, my husband has seen mine. He also probably could have written mine, but I have not used it in that situation. But having worked in a lot of, or having facilitated this conversation in a lot of different kinds of groups, I would wildly encourage you to use it in whatever group that it makes sense. I would love to talk to some like relationship counselors about where there's connection here.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, we're going to move on to Lisa, and then we'll come back with more questions for Heidi. Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
Hi, so happy to be here. And Heidi, when Heidi and I connected on this a couple weeks ago, I had so many notes and so many ideas for how we're going to build it in. So I love hearing about the user manual. That's awesome. Well, my name is Lisa, and I'm the VP of People and Culture and People here at DeliStar. And DeliStar is a family-owned business going into our 36th year of business. In 2021, the team went through a pretty big event. In January, there was a fire in our production facility, and the building was completely lost. So I share that because I think it talks a lot about just where we are in terms of our scale back up. So we, since the fire, have moved cities. So we went from Illinois to St. Louis, Missouri, and kind of had to be resilient and be nimble and think on our feet and really rebuild the business. So we are a year and a half into that rebuild, that rescale, and went from having 25 employees back up to 150 employees today. So a lot has happened in the past 12 to 18 months, and so when I talk about some of the things that we're doing, there's been many learnings along the way. So by no means do we always get it right or is everything perfect, but that's how you learn and that's how you grow. So what I love so much about the user manual and about this conversation really is just that idea of how do we kind of fill what I call the space between. So the space between when we hire someone to when they start. I'm really passionate about that kind of bucket of time, because I think it's really easy as leaders, as hiring managers, as HR, we get really excited about the numbers, and we know we have certain headcounts to fill, especially going through a plant scale up. We have, in the month of June, we hired 60 people. So we have to go, 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 go. And so it can be really easy to forget that these are people that we're bringing into our company, and we want to do it in a really thoughtful, intentional way. So I love the idea of a user manual and being able to insert that in that process, that space between. And some of the tools that we use at DeliStar, we have a program that we call Celebrate. And I know the Small Giants team is going to share out some of those program details with y'all after. But this Celebrate program, we're really passionate about, and it really helps us connect that space between. So when 33% of new hires leave in the first 90 days, that's a national statistic, 33% are leaving in the first 90 days that you bring them on. What can we do as leaders to help retain those people? You spend a lot of your time interviewing, recruiting. It's important to retain. So when we bring someone new on after they have officially accepted, we like to do a few things to help make sure that experience from accepting the job to starting is a really positive one. It helps them feel really engaged and connected to the team, pretty early on. So one of the things that we do is we call it a signing day. And signing day is an opportunity for that person to come in, formally sign their letter. We can do this digitally. I know there's all kinds of tools out there, but something about having them come in just for 10 to 15 minutes, sign that letter with their manager there, with their team there, and just spend a few minutes celebrating that they're going to be a part of it before their first day. It's been a really positive experience. We try to learn as much as we can about that person prior to signing day. So, what types of things do they like? As soon as they accept, we send them what we call a recognition profile or a Celebrate profile. And it asks some of the same questions as a user manual in a way, but we want to know very specific information about what do you like? What's your favorite drink in the morning? What's your go-to lunch order? Different types of things about what you like, what you gravitate towards, so that we can be really intentional and have those things on hand on your first day. Our people and culture team does such a great job at orientation, making sure that when we have 17 people starting, and these are manufacturing, production, frontline employees, that, if a Red Bull is what wakes you up in the morning and that's your go-to drink, then John's got a Red Bull sitting on the table waiting for him at orientation. So really trying to craft these very intentional experiences so people feel that they're supported and that they are part of the team, from day one and before. So when folks come in for signing day, we try to have something there to celebrate them, whether that's we're cheersing with kombucha, which we have on tap, or if that's a beer, if that's a soda, if that's whatever that is, to welcome and celebrate them. And it's a nice way for them to meet their team too, because what we hear from folks, and if anyone has had to start a new job, it can be kind of that first day, you get a little nervous and you have the first day jitters. And so already knowing the team, already being able to come in and see the space in a different way outside of a formal interview makes it feel like, the first day you already know everyone, you're already part of the family. So signing day has been a really fun thing. We take photos of their managers, shaking hands with them, and we give them either a DeliStar jersey or a t-shirt or some type of swag so that they have something to leave with that really connects them to us even more. Another thing that we do when they start is we have kind of not a happy hour, but kind of a breakfast mimosa cheers to them, mockmosas. So when they start, we have everyone gather that first day in the morning, and it's really casual, really informal. But we have some breakfast out, and people just kind of come up organically and introduce themselves to that person. We do an icebreaker if that's something that we know they're comfortable with, because on that recognition profile, we ask certain information. We want to celebrate them in the way that is meaningful to them. And not everyone wants to be celebrated out loud and publicly. Not everyone has that comfort level. So we want to make sure that how we are introducing them into the company matches with what their comfort level is, so that they feel, again, that connection right away. It's all about building the connection. That's really important. How do we build these experiences so that they feel really supported and really brought in? So if they're comfortable with an icebreaker, we'll do an icebreaker. If they're not comfortable with that, then we just encourage all of our employees to kind of mingle with them and maybe introduce themselves. So we try to be really meaningful about how that works. And being such a diverse company in terms of employees and jobs, we have folks who are on the plant production floor in manufacturing. We have, folks who are working in sanitation. We have a CFO, we have, accounting and other support functions. And so when we onboard someone, depending on their role, that experience is going to look a little different. And so we're still, every day we talk about how we can craft a better experience, for this team or for this role. And it's something that we're really passionate about and really excited to do. So this idea of really having that in place is really important. Another part of the Celebrate program, and a part that has been the most exciting to see, is what we call our Celebrate cards. So we have a peer-to-peer recognition kind of program that folks can go through, where you can acknowledge someone who's done something really great and write a card for them. I have a card here that you guys will see. You'll get it sent over to you. But every month we go through and we pull a card off of the wall. So on the plant wall, we have, all the cards are strung up. And, the first month we launched the program, we had like a couple cards on the wall, and it slowly started to build. And this past month, when we took all the cards down, we had, I think, 60 cards off the wall from one month, which was just so amazing to see. But when we pull a card down, we always read the card, who wrote the card, who's receiving the card, what it was for, and we give a prize, something, again, hopefully specific to that person, because we use those recognition profiles to really tailor any type of awards, recognition, celebrations to that individual. But we pull a card down, give both parties, something to celebrate the fact that they're celebrating each other. And we keep a really amazing spreadsheet. And actually, I learned this from my friend Heidi. So Heidi is just a wealth of information. But this really amazing spreadsheet where we track who was recognized all year. And then at the end of the year, we can really use some data to determine, kind of an end of the year Celebrate award, who should be receiving this end of the year award based on what the cards they've received. So we give one out to the one who's received the most cards or has made the most impact, and then one to somebody who has written the most cards, because it's just as important to us that we're celebrating and recognizing those who are taking the time to celebrate others. So the Celebrate program has just been such a fantastic tool for us. And I know the team at Small Giants has all of this information to share out with you guys. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Awesome. And we are going to follow up with all the resources there. There was one question that came in, and then I'm going to turn it over to Annie. And that was for Heidi. If there was any pushback from the team for maybe not wanting or willing to participate specifically with the user manuals.
I have not had too much hesitation. Maybe I might get some questions in advance, but because people know that everybody's equally going to be joining that, and they understand, the why behind it, once they get into building their user manual, it actually has made them more comfortable and being willing and ready to share. I actually had one person on a team who's actually an incredible, one of the best designers I've ever seen, who didn't design it really fussy. They put up an image and then spoke to it, and it was really impactful. She just found her own way to do it. So usually people end up wanting to do it once they get into it. And I've been able to, again, relate like why we're doing it, so, this is really to help people, and they see the why behind it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Annie.
Great. Thank you so much, Heidi and Lisa. This is all really wonderful and really exciting stuff. I know you both kind of touched a little bit on remote work, but I wonder if you either had anything else to say about how applicable these programs are to virtual teams, and kind of any advice you have for people who really want to build those bonds while working on a remote team.
Yeah, I can take that one. So we are a remote team at Skidmore. We're in many states and 3 time zones right now. And so I would say that just like some companies I've seen have everybody share preferred methods of communication, this is just a more robust way to learn about people and how and when they work. So we try to, not so much information that it's overwhelming that you can't keep track of everybody's setup, but just enough about, oh, they're a morning person, or please schedule conversations. Don't just Slack chat me. One of the things actually somebody DM'd me about already today, and it's the number one thing that was on my personal user manual, and it changed my life in both virtual and in-person settings, is I don't like what I call drive-bys. I don't like them. I'm very like scheduled and focused. I love a good water cooler conversation. Like I'll go on tangents and chat with you for days. But because of that, my boundary is like, I don't like when you just like come up to me or just like randomly call me, because it just disrupts my day, and it disrupts what I'm trying to accomplish, and it doesn't help others. So people just know that about me, and from my user manual, and then I've described it the way I just described it. And so thus in even a virtual setting, people know, like, don't call me on the phone, email me over text or whatever it is. And so some of those, it isn't just like the preferred method of communication. Sometimes it's just like the habit or the timing. That all is the same, whether you're in person or you're virtual. So it's been really helpful from a virtual perspective, with just like gaining empathy really quickly.
Great. Thank you so much. Lisa, did you have anything to add, or is that about cover it?
Yeah, we have a really small percentage of our population that's remote. So really just our sales team are the folks that are virtual. So when we onboard, we share the same tools, we share the recognition profile with them, and we look for opportunities to, try to connect with them virtually. I think when someone is virtual and they're not able to come in for a signing day, or they're not able to come in and be a part of some of the physical team building things we have, we do try to think of different, more creative ways that we can be a part of that. So I'm learning from Heidi on the user manual. I think that's such a great way to connect with people virtually.
Awesome. Thank you. I see Sarah has her hand raised. Sarah, did you want to unmute and ask a question?
Thank you. Hi, Heidi. So I'm super fascinated by the user manual, and my wheels are turning here on how we could implement some version of it on our team. I work at a small liberal arts and sciences college in Northeast Ohio. And Heidi, have you ever gotten feedback that it feels too prescriptive? Like we go into it to build trust. We go into it with, great intentions. But do you ever hear feedback that, well, this is how Sarah wants to be talked to, or this is how, Bob wants to be met with? Has it presented any challenges in that realm of conversations that, in a day and age where we're so cognizant of giving teams the autonomy they need, and, the personal space they need, and that we all need as leaders too. But I worry that, maybe just because of the way I might facilitate it, that I wouldn't want it to come across like I'm trying to be prescriptive for myself.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's a good question. I have not received that feedback, but I've also worked in spaces where we're really intentional with our general processes, and we've spent a lot of time defining meetings, building really good habits. We actually have a scheduling template when certain kinds of meetings can schedule at what time of the day and those kinds of things. So like we let our general framework that for the company expectations really lead. We have a sort of priority or precedence of like that everybody needs to understand and follow. Like for a brand studio, like client meetings are always going to come over internal meetings schedule wise. Like that's, like we're always going to say, okay, the client wants to meet, that'll boot, say, an internal meeting. So those frameworks are always like I said, they're like precedent. And then the individual's preferences are kind of subset. I haven't seen anybody build such strong boundaries around what they shared in a user manual that it like limited how people worked or did or didn't work. I usually see it like it adds to the communication instead of limits or takes things away. because people have had that empathy of like, well, we're still on the same team. And people usually, instead of people being like, I'm here and I told you, you need to meet me, I've very much more seen it like, oh, I know Sarah wants it this way, so I'm going to meet her where she is. It's far more assuming positive intent and positive forward than like heels on the ground. Here's my way. So for what it's worth.
I think, thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the question, Sarah. And then in the chat, Jason asked Lisa, what is some of the feedback that you've received from new hires that go through this process? I'm sure that'll be great to hear. And just kind of tacking onto that, what is some of the ROI that you guys have seen from these programs? So Lisa, if you want to start.
Yeah. So feedback we've heard from new hires, they blown away by just the level of care and I think intention that kind of went into their experience. You know, we had one new hire recently who shared with us that the last job that they were at when they started, you know, they were so excited. They walked in on their first day and no one really knew that they were coming. And so, you know, that expectation or that tone that is set, you know, it kind of just snowballed for that person as they were continuing to be a part of that company in that position. And it really set the bar pretty low. So when she started with us, she was just blown away by just how excited we were for her to start. And, you know, when she heard that we had 150 employees, she was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. I thought maybe I was like one of 5 people or something, and that's why I was getting so much attention. So we've heard really positive things from folks. I think what we're always trying to manage and continue to improve upon is how do we ensure that that experience is carried through no matter the position, right? So when we're in this hyper growth mode and we're hiring 60 people at a time, how do we make sure that everyone has as intentional as an experience? So definitely some room to continue to grow there, but just so far, everything, all the feedback we've gotten has been really uplifting and really positive.
Go ahead. No, please finish.
I was just going to say, to tag on to kind of the ROI aspect. So we are a protein ingredient manufacturer, and in the food manufacturing space, you know, retention is always something that is talked about. You know, how do we, especially, you know, in the market that we're in, how do we make sure that retention stays really strong? And what we've seen in that group of, you know, 90 days, you know, we kind of track retention in a few different buckets, but 90 days, 6 months, those are the 2 areas where you start to see people shift and leave, especially in our industry and space. And so we've had just really strong retention of all of those new hires that we've brought on. So when we, you know, hired the 60 employees at their 90-day mark, we had a 98% retention. So I think from the ROI aspect, we see that direct correlation to how we onboard them is really a powerful tool to how we keep them engaged and keep them as part of the team.
I was just going to add, when Lisa described the whole signing day experience to me, I was just thinking about all the times that I've started a big place or like even any space where you're like, where's the bathroom? Where's the coffee pot? Who are my people? Or like the first day your boss is busy or not there. So you're just with random people and like shoved in a room with a computer. And whereas when you come in the day before you start and you already get to see all that stuff, boy, like that, just the stress that you don't have on that first day, because you've already been there and you already met everybody and you already saw it. I just think that's so brilliant from a like feeling like you belong. The belonging sense. I love it so much. So much, just knowing the stress I've had. To answer the question about, you know, ROI, this one, the user manual is a little bit harder to track. You know, it's all about interpersonal dynamics and working together more easily. You know, I can tell you a lot of anecdotes like about how just my drive-by is lowered when people heard my own user manual, or I know some other ones, it'll be like having seen other people's strengths finders list. And I've even seen some wonderful small giants companies that put their top 3 strengths finder actually in their email signatures. when I just knew that about a couple people, it really helped me understand where they were coming from. One of the leaders I work with, responsibility is their top strengths finder, and it just makes me understand the lens in which they put decision making through. And so regardless of if it's a leadership situation, if it's a business accounting situation, or whatever it is, like I just kind of know where he's coming from because of those things that he concisely shared in a user manual. So it just, again, it's not necessarily like going into assuming things about people. It's more like I have a better ability of assuming positive intent and like seeing the world through their eyes, which has been really helpful. And like I said, when this person who was on my team left, I didn't realize how much she was using user manuals while she was here, until she realized now she has to work with all these new people and doesn't know where to start. And so I just thought that the lack of them, which is where we're all coming from originally, is that ROI or lack thereof is more important than the plus. So. Yeah. Oh, one other thought. We just had someone start and we have the same Myers-Briggs, and I was like, oh, okay. And then we connected on a whole bunch of things on because we have the exact same Myers-Briggs. So one of our teammates took everybody's something that everybody had shared and then plotted it on a graph for a Monday morning all hands meeting. And she took it upon herself to do that from going through everybody's user manuals and just like comparing and contrasting. And it was really fun to see how she could then like take it a step further and show how these individual user manuals, how they all shook out for everybody as a team. Myers-Briggs is a form of like a personality test / there's probably somebody on this who has better language for what Myers-Briggs is, but 16personalities.com, I think it is my favorite way to see Myers-Briggs. ENFJ is where the coach is at.
It's great. Thank you. Oh, and Henza shared that in the chat. So yeah, I know a lot of companies use that. And like you said, Heidi, if a company's already using one of those personality type tools, that's a great thing to incorporate. Thank you. And then for anybody who has any questions coming up, feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the chat. I'm looking at some questions that came in during the registration. So obviously you guys are both in leadership, but do you have any ways to promote positive culture and change management when you're not a manager?
Oh, I love that one. I think some of the most powerful, I shouldn't say powerful, some of the most supportive and engaged employees are some of those informal leaders, right? I think that, titles, someone who is just naturally really great at being a promoter and being engaged and encouraged and supportive of the work can happen across the board. So how do you recognize, support, and uplift those individuals, I would say? I think that that's a big piece of it. I think sometimes, places I've been in the past, we've looked at, well, only leaders, only a certain level can either do certain activities or be part of these culture building things. And so anytime we can include and open up that door to others, I think is really a powerful tool because then we're giving that gift of experience to that next generation of leader. And there's opportunities we miss in growing and kind of grooming that next level or layer of talent. So I would say look for those opportunities across the board to encourage and involve others and let others kind of have the ability to be a part of it.
Excellent answer. I would say be the change you wish to see in the world. I mean, I think that kind of thinking makes so much sense. So whether it's like modeling the behavior that you expect or giving feedback to people who are doing the things that you relate to or you see as positive leadership and giving that feedback or, giving that appropriate constructive criticism of leadership. I think one of the things that's the most lonely about being a leader is that then people think that they can't help you, give you positive or negative feedback. And so the best way to be a leader is to help a leader. And the other thing that I like, a life mantra, is if you have the opportunity to do something, bring somebody else along. So even if you're not a leader, if you can help somebody who isn't in your position, who, you know, maybe it's not hierarchy wise, but who, you know, doesn't have as much experience, you helping them is a form of leadership that then models behavior to other leaders. So you don't have to have the title to be a leader.
Great, thank you for that reminder. All right, so I know, Lisa, you talked about how the programs can look a little different based on departments, since you do have a lot of departments. How do you kind of allow those department heads, or who's managing the program throughout the departments, how do you let them kind of interpret the programs to fit their department and make sure that there's buy-in there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So someone on our team, she is our director of employee experience, and really she's fantastic at going to leaders before someone on their team starts and really kind of sharing the plan or the kind of template or idea of you know, how we're going to bring them in and what that looks like from a Celebrate program mindset. So they at that time get to, you know, kind of, if there's some adjustments that need to be made based on that person or their role, kind of in real time get to have that conversation and share some of that feedback. And so this is, you know, having that person who's really responsible for connecting those dots is, I think, really, really key to it. So it is something that is led through the people and culture team. We don't put that on the manager, the hiring manager, to facilitate. We really want to make sure that there's some consistency in the program, but also that the program is tailored to the person and the work that they're going to be doing, the team that they're going to be on. So, you know, there have been some examples in the past of, you know, maybe one team would like to take that person out to lunch on that first day, and, you know, it makes sense for after lunch for them to come back and get, you know, kind of get their desk ready and do some kind of light things and then head out. Whereas another person might say, you know, that doesn't really work for our team. We need this person to really get through all of the training, and maybe we'd like to do lunch like after their second week. You know, so it just really kind of depends on that leader, and we really lean into them to help us craft an experience that's going to be intentional and impactful.
Great, thank you. And then you also mentioned kind of using that Celebrate questionnaire, kind of recognizing people's personalities, and also Heidi in the user manual on personalities. How do you make sure that you do involve the people who are more introverted and maybe are a little bit hesitant about the more like the presentations or the more public attention? Do you have any specific examples of times when you've had introverted employees and how you've incorporated them?
I mean, as far as our user manual system goes, when I've seen all of them at once and then compared, suddenly we realized that more people were introverts and extroverts, you know, and we actually had a conversation about that, and people sort of, as part of their user manual, defined what introvert or extrovert meant to them. Sometimes it meant comfort in presentation. Sometimes it just meant more, I like to talk to people more one-on-one than in a group, or I like to write things and then share, or whatever it meant to them, where they found their energy, how they like to communicate, etc. So that's where, for user manual specifically, I wildly suggest don't tell people what framework, or don't tell people specifically how to answer the questions. Let them organically answer it for themselves and organically decide how to present it. In the facilitating the conversation, for the folks who maybe didn't want to like do a big presentation or like go through it and like be very like center of attention during their portion, they printed it out, they handed it out. Maybe they spoke to a couple things to it, or they just let everybody read it and then we reacted to it. So I think that, again, meet people where they are in their own comfort level, and it has the same kind of results.
Yeah, and I would say that we've had folks who have said, you know, I don't really like to be publicly recognized. And so as part of the Celebrate program, if we pull those cards for those monthly award winners and we realize that it's one of those, folks who have shared with us that that's not how they like to be celebrated, we make a point to honor that. We're not going to read their card out loud at a company meeting. We're going to do something a little bit quieter behind the scenes to honor what's impactful for them. And the same goes with our end of year awards. We have about 8 awards that we go through at the end of the year for employees during our kind of winter end of the year party. And there are folks who have shared that that's, getting up in front of people and accepting award is not their jam. So that's fine. What can we do to honor them in a different way? So I would say for those who have shared that with us, we really try to be respectful and mindful of, what's going to make a difference for them.
Actually, if I can keep going on that one, I had a similar experience where I worked for a company that we had a 70 to 90-ish people, and we had a very robust celebration program. It was called the High Five program. And we actually added a checkbox to the form that said, I don't want to read this, or because they wanted to give somebody acknowledgement, but the way the celebration was, they read the high five to the whole company. So they would just mark that, and we wouldn't even acknowledge it. Just whomever was running the meeting would read it and know to read it. We also identified in that program that there were certain people who were not giving high fives, but were acknowledging people outside of the framework because they don't like public celebration, so they weren't giving public celebration. And that's where we started identifying those 5 methods of appreciation for those personal ones. And so I was working with managers to say, hey, these people don't like this public thing, but they really like gifts. So we know they like Starbucks or they love whatever it is. Why don't we just make sure we, grab them lunch and then say that this is their high five, and it's still in the framework, but it met their own, way they like to be recognized. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Does anybody have any questions that are coming up? Oh, Bill shared a resource in the catalog, and we're going to share all these resources that have been put in the chat, as well as the things that Heidi and Lisa both shared during their talks. We'll add links and everything with our follow-up email that you guys will get tomorrow. So don't worry about that. Any other questions?
I had actually, I just thought of one more little user manual ad that I just added recently. I just heard from a manager leader about the concept of accidental diminishers. If anybody has heard of this, if not, Google it. And it's almost like a personality kind of thing. But some of them are like rapid responder. That's a really good example, where if you acknowledge what your accidental diminisher is, then other people can look out for it and help you not diminish yourself accidentally. So rapid responder is you ask me something and I feel compelled to give you the answer right away without really thinking about it or taking a moment, or giving up something I'm trying to do because I'm trying to answer you right this second. And so if I just know that you're an accidental diminisher, maybe when I ask you a question, I say, please don't answer this right now. Please think about this, and we will talk about this on our one-on-one meeting in 3 days. And that would be me helping you as a rapid responder with your accidental diminishing. And that concept really, really helped me both see what I was doing and help others not diminish themselves. So that link is in the user manual one, but it's not a concept that I just heard a lot. It isn't on LinkedIn, hadn't seen it in a Small Giants Summit, so I wanted to bring it up.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thank you for bringing that to attention. Maybe it'll hit the blog soon. So, all right. Well, Heidi and Lisa, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
I'm sorry, I did have one quick question before we wrap, which is, have you ever used this with clients or partners?
I have not used user manuals with partners or clients yet. I have used our high five acknowledgement celebration program with clients. We once had a client who wanted to celebrate our people, and so we showed them our framework and they used it. And we also had a client who we really appreciated and they were really a great partner, so we used our framework back and celebrate, like we sent them high fives, like, and the celebration. And then it was really neat because they brought their team to our facility and we put the celebration up on the screen and like gave them the swag in front of everybody as if they were an employee. And it was a really cool client company moment. Have you, Lisa?
Yeah, I was just thinking, we've done the exact same thing for vendors that we've worked with. We've written them celebrate cards and, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, very similar.
Super. Gosh, thank you, Heidi and Lisa, so much. A round of applause on Zoom here, you guys. I hope you appreciated their time. If you want to hang out with Heidi and Lisa, you can certainly do that at the Small Giant Summit, which is happening May 2nd to 4th in Detroit, Michigan, in just a couple of months. There's lots of information on our site. We'll also drop a link and we'll share in the follow-up resources. We would love to see you guys there. We have a wonderful program and it's a couple of days of connecting and learning and really networking with other wonderful small giants. So that's May 2nd to 4th. And then also we have one more virtual event happening in March. It's on March 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please come back and hang out with us and join that conversation. Thank you all so much. Be well, take care, and we'll see you next month. Bye, everyone.